All right, so we are going to get started. I'm Alicia Palelis.
And I am Natalia Moron, and we are Autism Elements.
So today's Thursday Thoughts. This is just more a gathering and a brainstorming of ideas as we prepare for face-to-face learning. Our schools down here in Florida are getting started with our students tomorrow for some of our kiddos. So we're eager to get new thoughts and new ideas from across the nation of how people are doing this safely and productively for our students. So we made a little PowerPoint just to have something to go through. And so we wanted to start first with expectations. Go ahead, Natalia.
So the first one is whole body or computer, listening, obviously. We're going to ask that everyone mutes themselves to prevent excessive feedback and noise. We're going to ask everyone to clarify any questions if you have anything that you would like to be answered, just make sure to put them in the chat so we can address them at a later time, or you can also raise your hand. And obviously, always be respectful with everyone working so hard. We want to keep this a positive environment for all participants. Lastly, we're going to ask if you write your name and email and the state you're from, just so we can go ahead and get an idea who's participating with whatnot. Alicia?
All right. And so we're going to get started with setting up the physical space. And we're talking specifically about the room arrangement. So I know, like in general education classes, many of their tables and things were moved out of the room. But for our self-contained ESE class, we know that furniture and physical boundaries are really important for our kids to really understand that this is their space and it kind of needs to be contained a little bit. So we found some photos that we had seen online, using tape as visual boundaries, and then also furniture here. So here it would be your student and then furniture around that. So we kind of wanted just to hear if anybody had any other ideas or solutions that they've used for creating more space, and Natalia, if you had more too.
Well, I saw kind of what you mentioned. I've been looking a lot online to see what other schools who are actually physically back face to face, what they've been using. So there is that tape, but even with that tape, I've seen where they create boundaries with either bookshelves or bookcases, those rolling carts as well, to give them that boundary, or they'll use even drawers. Those pull-out plastic drawers from like Rubbermaid that are like 3 of them. So they'll do it where they can set up everything right there. I feel like if you're looking into the, ESC world or the SPED world, it's really hard to just see that picture of the little cubicles with the tape on the floor and our kids remaining there. I do feel like they need more boundary, and with the CDC guidelines, that's where I feel like it's the fear of everyone is that, let's be real, are they always going to stay within that square, and what can we do to help them with that transition going on, from one area to the other.
And I think too, like we have to really be thinking about our students and each individual needs, because some could sit right there in their square chair and be just fine with that boundary of the tape for circle time or something like that. But we know also some other kiddos that won't work for them and they need a little bit more. So thinking about that is going to really.
I want to go back to the physical setup real quick, because I know if we're looking in the ESC world, I think we normally think of creating a class with centers where students rotate around. And I think we have to change that mindset right now, where it's not going to be necessarily the students are rotating, but maybe the adults are the ones rotating to assist students, still following the CDC safety guidelines. Are we, going to make sure that everything that they need is right there? Like, what are some things we need to think about that physical space and setting it up? Because I do think that it is changing how we are going to be doing things right now, or how we're used to it, especially if you're using something like Teach. If you're using that methodology and strategies, you definitely want to make sure that you are changing your mindset, not necessarily getting away from it, but you might have to think different. Like, I was a color coordinator. I wanted all my students to have a color. I would do the same thing. I would create a center with, maybe my student Minnie is going to be all red. So maybe she's going to have, red drawers, red pencil case, red schedule backups, whatever it is, a red folder. anything that is related to that child, so they know that's their item, I would have it in that color. You know, even the tape on the floor, that's another good one too, which I've seen that they're basically putting different colors so they know that's where the kid belongs, and they can start associating themselves with that color coordination. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of what else can we do while keeping these CDC guidelines and maintaining all of us safe. I don't know if you guys have any other idea, anything else you can think about.
Natalia, Rhonda is trying to get in. I admitted her, but now I don't see her anymore.
I know, I think it went blank. Janet, I know that you are in different posts. Have you seen anything else, anywhere else, of how they're setting up their classrooms?
Honestly, no, I haven't.
See, that's really where I'm like trying to see, because I know as many schools are coming back. I know there's some that have, but again, it really depends on the model I think that counties are taking. You know, every county seems to be a little bit different. There are those hands-on situations, and then there's the ones where even though they're not going to be hands-on, even with all the PPE, they are, what would be the word? Like they're still kind of making them more activities, right? Because let's be honest, our kids are not just going to sit in front of that computer, not in a classroom. I mean, they don't sit at home, much less in a classroom with all the other distractions and other kids, and finally seeing peers after so long. I can't think of, you know, what else could we help in order to organize the CDC guidelines?
Well, because we have other slides we want to hit as well, we're going to move on from this one. But if we think of anything, we can always come back to this slide, okay?
Perfect.
So the next one is all about organizing and cleaning materials. And I think, you know, this is definitely a concern that many teachers have. So how can we create ways to organize the students' materials so that other children are not touching them? Who and when are we scheduling this and whatnot? So I just thought it would be a great idea to talk about this and share ideas too. And I see that Rhonda is in, I believe. Rhonda, welcome.
Hello, friends.
Hey.
How are you?
Happy to see you. So we just finished talking about room arrangement, but we can go back to that at the end if we have time. Okay, Rhonda?
Sure, whatever works. I was as a teacher at a school set up, so I got caught up in the middle and lost time. Lots of time.
They were lucky to have you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So we're now talking about organizing and cleaning materials and just trying to figure out how are we going to do this as we organize the individual materials for students.
So maybe, you know, definitely bins, and I know like at Dollar Store or Dollar Tree, they have like the colored bins, so you could even use those that go along with, you know, identifying each student being a different color if you can. And then I also found two online, or maybe you did, Natalia, these bags that have different color zippers. So again, you can go with that whole color scheme.
I think another thing to organize might be adding their pictures. You know,
Yes.
sometimes it might help, like actually seeing their own picture without a
names.
Yeah, or names, you know, depending on the level they're at. I definitely, one thing that
I saw even like on the writing utensils where they put the color tape on a pencil or on the crayons or whatever, so everything is really identified.
Like even the electrical tape, like you could probably use, I know we call them in a whole bunch, right, with different colors. The only thing I do find a little, you know, in that picture is how close things are. Given
I did notice that too.
I want to put that out there. It's not that we are promoting that, but I did like the idea of using the color, you know, pouches. That I did like. I would definitely like, you know, even have a spot where the kid has their own stuff put in. And it's going to be, I think, a lot of that changing the kids' mindset too, especially with how we were used to running classes before. Where, you know,
and I think too, like where we used to have, you know, a visual schedule area, a check-in area, where now we won't have that. It'll be maybe at their individual stations or what have you, or on their desks.
So that's how we were setting it up in this teacher's classroom, is that everyone is going to have a schedule. They're young students and they need to be able to manipulate and use a detachable schedule. So they're having their schedule right near their desk, and then they have their own second whole schedule that is the check-in board schedule. And that will afford them to be able to still manipulate and get up and move, but stay within their assigned area. So
True, because they're not going to check in to a different location. It's the same spot.
right.
Love that.
So how
Yeah.
do they do it again? So it's kind of like they almost have like check in, check out.
So
Not
they have like two schedules almost, right, Rhonda?
Right. Their schedule is either going to be like right on the top of their desk, maybe, or maybe it's going to be on the something to the left of them, and then they check their schedule, and then they go over and they check it in to the right of them, kind of that like left to right progression, you know. But so yeah, they basically have two full schedules in separate spots within their specified area. So the transition is not from place to place, but from activity to activity, which is all still going to be done in their same spot, right? So, and you know what? We're still in the midst of creating those schedules, so I can't even show it to you. Otherwise, I would just take you right in the room. And but the room is still a beautiful work in progress.
Awesome. And send us that photo so we can share too.
Send us a photo because I would love to share that, and just go ahead and show other people, because I don't think we're quite thinking about those little details, but it could essentially change how we run the class completely.
Yeah, well, you know, like one thing is that this teacher had a kind of not an iconic schedule in her online Canvas. She had like not emojis, but you know, like almost like little like emojis kind of as her schedule pieces. And so she wanted to continue that because it's still online learning. So she's not using a schedule like from last year. She's using her online schedule. And so we started putting it together, and then we were like, oh my gosh, we forgot about putting a bathroom break anytime, because, you know, on the online, well, that's taken care of at home. So she wasn't even thinking about, okay, wait, I need to have a bathroom visual. So for everybody listening, if you're getting started, remember your bathroom schedule, your bathroom visuals, because your kids are going to need to wash their hands frequently. So that might all be scheduled in, or at least on the schedule, so that they remember and you remember to do it.
Yeah. And then I'm also looking at this second photo, thinking of having a bin or a big box of things that as kids mouth or as kids touch, that can go right in the bin that needs to be sanitized, you know. And I think that's something totally different that we would forget, but you need to have. I used to have the lost items bin.
Yes.
Like puzzle pieces or motor game pieces, but now it'll be a bin of needing to be sanitized.
So it's the Sani box.
Yes, the Sani
box.
You know, and I'm going to be honest, I know that some people are going to be like, well, you know, that's not my job and I don't want to do that. But if we really think about it, we used to do it back in the days too.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I used to use every precaution, put my gloves on, you know, I would, you know, I even had like, you know, from the Dollar Tree, let's be honest, we can buy a whole pack, like this big that brings like, you know, sponges that we can toss and like, you know, throw away. Just trying to find ways to keep things really clean. But I really do think we needed one for lost and found, because, you know, things are still going to get lost and we'll probably have to sanitize. At this point, everything could be sanitized. If it's lost, it's going to be sanitized.
And I think the who and when to clean, I think as long as that is scheduled and you put it into the zone schedule. And, you know, I was always the kind of teacher that like everybody shared the wealth. So if I'm cleaning today and I don't really like that job, then we can rotate it, you know, or in the morning I clean, in the afternoon you clean, or what have you, you know. So just really communicate and share ideas and thoughts of who, you know, because some people love cleaning and that's their thing. So sometimes I would be like, you clean, I'll do the potty time.
You know what? I don't know if we've thought about when it comes to cleaning, and I'm just putting that thought out there. You know, back in the days when we had, oh my God, I can't believe I lost it. Oh, the body sock and breakfast and things like that. We used to share.
Yeah,
So
taking it home and washing it.
age now, and I wonder what is going to be the take of, well, where do we clean these items? Our school is going to provide that too. Like, that's something to have in the back of
Well,
some of those.
I don't think it's going to be any like cloth items, so we wouldn't be using the body sock right now, but like plastic items,
Yeah, but how
things
about
that can be wiped down.
things like that? If students need those sensory items.
You cannot use anything cloth is what.
Wow. I know that's going to throw in for a loop for some of the students who really benefit from
But
those.
there's a lot, and I think that's part of this, is thinking outside the box of what can we use. And I think let's go, there is a slide about that stuff too, so let's move on to the next one. So the next one is all about hand washing and hand sanitizing, still talking about cleaning. And so I wrote down like expectations. So of course we want to have those expectations and routines built in. So, you know, first thing in the morning, you enter my classroom, you're going to wash your hands.
I like the sanitizer station. I think as soon as you walk into the class, like, I know it's crazy, but I am one of those who would be making sure as soon as you walk in, you got to pump that little hand sanitizer.
Yeah. And so I found that little cute picture too. Like, this is right in the entranceway. So there's a stop sign, there's a visual here, there's a hand sanitizer, there's a tissue if they need something, you know, because even before COVID, some of our kids would come in with half their breakfast on their face and whatnot. So, you know, we might need to start like a little self-care station, which is a great life skill anyways for our kids, you know. And then two, like the 20 seconds that we're supposed to be teaching, or not teaching, the 20 seconds that we're supposed to be washing our hands, you know, creating maybe a song that we sing, or are we counting together for some of our kids, or what have you, you know, or if they're nonverbal, maybe they're having the visual where they can, you know, kind of, you point to as they're washing their own hands. And I think what's super important to be thinking about too is building the independence in that. The more that we can have our hands off, the safer our students are and the safer that we are. So, you know, having that task strip of turn on the water, get the soap, you know, all breaking that down for our kids so that they can be independent in that and they don't need us right there. Is there anything else on this subject that you guys can think of?
No, I mean, I really like the visual. I mean, I'm just, again, trying to think of all these things that I know people are going to come up with. Just the task analysis, having step by step. I don't think we need to wait until it happens. I think we really need to be proactive rather than reactive. We need to start teaching these skills even through when we're doing morning work, maybe, you know, like part of our circle time, let's sing that hand washing song. So when it's time to come to the hand washing time, we're going to have those there. I feel like we sometimes wait until it's happening, but we might want to start even practicing like just in the air, imagination, you know, now we're tapping into just making them pretend and role play. I mean, think of all the ways you can use those skills, you're multitasking, and just kind of do it again before you're even there. Because I feel like, you know, some of these kids are even like with a little spray bottle. I mean, think about it, they all got their own little spray bottle and we're going to practice.
Yep.
I mean, it sounds silly, but I know the more you do it, the better they're going to get at it. And when we get to the times that we truly need this, they're going to be, again, desensitized and they're going to be able to do it more successfully. And who's going to be cleaning the handle, too? Things to happen every time a kid uses it.
Spraying and cleaning the handle, yes. And, you know, I think, Natalia, you're right. The whole idea of practicing and you know, doing just pretend washing your hands. Because, you know, when you think about it, especially young kids or complex kids or maybe all male humans on the face of the earth, I'm not sure, you know, their hand washing procedures tend to be a little lax or might still need to be developed. So, you know, the idea of like actually moving your hands and curling them around when you wash and opening the paper towel and drying your hands, you know.
And most kids, they put the soap and right away they put it under. And I'm like, no.
Right.
That's not. Like, you're first lathering, you know, so even just thinking and breaking down that is so important.
Because I teach my daughter that. I always tell her, first you wet your hands, then you get the soap so you can start doing that. Because otherwise you lose the soap.
Right. So I tell my son, make bubbles, make bubbles.
That's
I want to
right,
see those
bubbles.
bubbles, you know, and so using that same kind of language with our kids so that they're not just going through the motions, but not really understanding what they're doing even.
If you want to get crazy, I know Rhonda loves how we always do this. Like you're teaching also things like, look, inside, on the top, the other top.
Yeah, prepositions.
I mean, think of so many things to cover.
Yeah, so hand washing actually becomes a language activity, you know.
Follow your directions. I mean, so don't just think of this like, oh my God, this is one more thing. No, we're teaching them many other skills at the same time.
Yep.
You know what, also I wanted to just say, Alicia, I like this photograph because of the stop sign. You know,
Yes.
don't forget, guys, that all of these routines are going to be still brand new. I mean, we've been in e-learning, they've been at home. They, you know, they're either their parents have just worked them through the hand washing or not hand washed or used, you know, the little towelettes or whatever. And so the idea that I got to stop and I got to do this. And it's funny, I just made like 10 stop signs for this teacher's room, you know, on the doors, because remember, if we're not going to have as much physical structure in the room, then we have to have more visual structure in the room.
Yeah.
So stop signs on all the doors, stop signs at the exiting of each of the students' areas.
I was thinking the same thing.
You know, so the use of the visual tools becomes even more critical at this point in time.
I'm going to put that in.
Look at those beautifully structured rooms for the COVID lifetime.
For the COVID style.
I mean, you know, we were just talking about this, even teach, I think we need to start rethinking. It's the same concept, just thinking backwards. You know, instead of students rotating, now we're going to flip it. It's teachers rotating. You know, they have their own centers. They're going to have their own work baskets. They're going to have all the same things. They will have at every center, but it's going to be a little bit different. Maybe listening center becomes your computer time where you could play, you know, like it's just how you change things. Oh, everybody's favorite one right now.
All right, now PPE. So talking about PPE, what to wear, when to wear it, the big one, when to change it, and what to teach.
Oh, what to wear. I mean, let's start with that. I think what to wear, it really depends on your comfort level. I think people need to do what they feel comfortable. I
agree, Natalia, I agree, but I also want to remind everyone that from the beginning, our grocery store attendants have been right there with us. So, you know, you have to do what you feel comfortable, but also remember that you know, you're going to keep yourself clean and help kids learn to keep themselves clean. But I think everybody has to, borrowing from Alicia, stop and breathe.
Yeah.
You know, not every person, not every kid that you come in contact with, in fact, 99% of them are not going to have COVID. So, you know, breathe. We have been interacting with store attendants and gas station attendants, unless you're like me and you have a Tesla, or, you know, and now, you know, people at restaurants. And so, you know, our kids, yes, might be a little bit more susceptible or might, you know, come with like a cold or whatever. We were hoping not, but, you know, still like keep yourself calm to the fact that most of the time there's not going to be COVID in your room, you know, and the more vigilant you are, the better, but keep yourself calm, because I think people have gotten almost, you know, like the fear of the unknown has almost taken over our brain. Yeah, so I just want to remind everybody to stay calm and just be cautious and careful, but stay calm, and we will get through this.
And also, I mean, just going into that one, I think Lisa, to the next one is when to wear. I mean, you need to do what you feel comfortable, being rational, obviously. But
Yes.
you also need to, almost like when you assess everything, you need to assess your audience. If your kids are all, when you finally get them back face to face, if they all look pretty healthy, you know, you will find some of the things like, you know, the constant sneezing, the coughing, things like that. Obviously, those are when you want to even take more precautions. But you're right, we can't drive ourselves to the point where we're not sleeping, because here's what's going to happen. If we get stressed out, and Alicia, I know you're one on this one, our immune system is going to go down. If our immune system goes down, we're more susceptible. So we cannot let the stress take over our life either.
Right. However, I will be a little devil's advocate.
Okay.
And unfortunately with COVID, some people are symptom free.
Yeah.
And so just like with other illnesses such as HIV and things like that, we don't know who has it, but we still have to take the precautions as if everybody has it. So I think thinking of, you know, well, when do I really need to be wearing covered, you know? Obviously, if you're doing feeding and toileting, yeah, you're going to be having bodily fluids possibly. That's a time that you need to be covered, you know? But the rest of the time, a mask is probably enough. And if you have your physical distance, then you don't even necessarily need to wear the mask then maybe, you know? But again, you know what your comfort level is too, but regarding the mask, but right, I think we can't be super paranoid and like, you know, wash our hands 500 times a day. No, because then you're going to create other issues. But, you know, we just have to be smart about it, that this is very, very, very contagious. So we just have to protect ourselves, and not only ourselves too, but I'm also worried about the other kids in the class. You know, if we have children who are not wearing masks, how are we protecting then our other students from the children that cannot wear masks? You know, so I think we need to be aware of that as well, you know. So I think as staff, we're covered for what we need to be, but making sure that, let's say we have a student that has some behaviors, for example, that likes to spit, or when he's upset, he spits. We need to make sure that our other students then are protected from that too, if we're covered from head to toe and our other little guys are not. So
Right.
I think that is important too. And then I know there had been some conversation of when do we change? Like, so let's say, you know, I'm a teacher and I'm toilet training all of the students in my room, let's just say. Hopefully nobody is doing all of them at one time, but let's just say, or even just toileting in general, you need to be in there helping the kids. So we have to be remembering that that gown is for one child, just like we would take off our gloves and throw those gloves away, same thing with that gown.
Right.
Okay, so I think that that's important to know. Or let's say, for me, I deal with behavior. So I have a gown on because I have a student that's trying to bite me, he's spitting at me. When that behavior has de-escalated, then I'm going to remove that gown. And, you know, if he's going to be fine and I can move on to another one, I don't need one. But if another kid starts up, then I'm going to have to put on another gown. So, or if you're in a classroom that does have a lot of explosive behaviors.
I'm going to throw something crazy with this whole PPE, because I think of the kids, and it breaks my heart that they're going to be terrified to death when they see somebody teaching them dressed like that. So I feel like you need to make it part, before you start wearing all of that, make it a game and like start saying, okay,
yes,
I'm like a superhero and I am going to wear my superhero gear. I'm going to be a cool teacher, and then do it like, I'm not saying don't be safe, but just maybe you want to like ease in what, you know, you're dealing with kids even 3 years old. Like to me, it's like PTSD. Most kids just associate that outfit with people who have hurt them in the past, putting vaccines, you know, probing them when they're feeling sick, like, you know, putting, you know, the sticks in their mouth to check their throat. I mean, like, there's such a negative field about that it breaks my heart that we're going to walk in and this is the first image they're going to see coming back to school after so many months. So I feel like I'm still saying that, like, you could start with your mask. I'm saying you could do it quick too, but just do at least a little introduction about it. Like, don't just open the door. I mean, I've seen, and again, I know people's anxieties and fears are there, but I've seen even like things that you put over, like literally like a hamper backwards and things like that. I mean, if you walked into that and you're 3 years old, I would probably run the other way.
Right. And this photo is from when I brought my children to get their vaccinations. And so I was like, oh, can I get a photo of you? Because this is what we're going to be dressed like. So I need a copy of this.
So I feel like if you're gonna use that, because that is, you know, to protect yourself and others, just at least do a little introduction to it, make it fun, so the kids see it in a more positive way than such a negative way.
And you know what, Natalia, that's a great idea. I love the superhero idea. And you know, you might even it may be worth using one of the or a couple of the paper gowns to let them try them on.
Yeah.
You know, so that it isn't like this, you know, like it's almost like this scary monster, like, you know, the hazmat suits, you know, like you can't see the people underneath them, and it's very scary for kids who might not truly understand the whole intensity of what's going on. So yeah, that idea of trying to maybe show yourself putting the pieces on so that they can see, there you are, and now you're putting this, and then you're putting this, you know. So
and when firemen come to the schools, that's what they do.
right.
So that they teach the kids not to be fearful of them in that huge outfit. So I think that's an awesome idea, Rhonda, so that they get kind of desensitized. And along that same line is, you know, teaching about wearing masks. And I found this great photo for some kids, like my ears get irritated when I wear masks for too long, you know. So I found this photo of a child wearing a hat that has a button sewed on it. So the mask actually doesn't fit on the ear, but it's held up by this button. And I thought that's so great, because that's another reason why our kids don't like masks. So, you know, if some of our kids, if behind the ear is what's bothering them, then here's a perfect solution too that we could use.
And so, you know, for girls, they actually have headbands that you can do the same thing. You can actually, you know, sew in those buttons,
right.
And they use the same concept and they put it back. But here's the thing that people need to be aware is, if you're going to do that, you have to make sure that the string attached to the mask is long enough, so it's not really putting it so tight in their face that they feel so claustrophobic. So just be mindful of that could be an option for them if it's bothering their ears, because that could be a reason why they don't want to wear it, you know. So just kind of having that. I actually really like the Old Navy, not that I'm promoting Old Navy, but they do sell ones that have like a little button on the side that you can actually enlarge and shrink the string, which was nice because you can adapt as you need.
Yeah,
that's a great idea. Hey, was there anybody joining us that might have something to say about this?
We only have Janet who joined us.
Oh, hi, Janet.
Hi, Rhonda.
Hey.
Do you have any ideas of anything that we've talked about so far, Janet? Or are you just kind of here to listen?
I'm just kind of here to listen, see
All
what good advice you guys have.
All right, we're happy you're here.
We'll share this out later.
All right, and the next one is all about, we already started to talk about it, but ways to help our kids increase independence, because, you know, the more independent they can be, then the less that we have to get close to them, you know. And I think, you know, I've been preaching for forever, like physical prompts should be the last thing unless you're necessarily teaching a skill. But I think sometimes as adults, we get stuck there because it's quicker for us to just do it for them or with them, or because, you know, we're not presuming competence sometimes too with our kids. So, you know, I think the more during this time that we can use visual and gestural prompts, the better off we're all going to be. So, you know, really working
that task
use those prompts.
Task analysis, I think we need to bring it back. I have seen a lot of people diffuse from it, but the other day, ironically, going through my old digital files in my USB, I found I had a student who needed his name Velcroed, and I literally took a picture of every single step and put it on a strip. Yes. I think we need to start pushing more towards that, and like you said, stepping away from the physical, reminding them like, here's the steps, and you may do only one thing at a time and like focus like for a good couple of days on getting that kid to become independent to do that. But we should be doing this more and more because our kids need to see how to get it done. You know, I used to do it even for the radio when they were turned on. Like I literally had a task strip with like color buttons too, where they would go, you have to start here, press the red, then the star, then the butterfly. Like, yeah, I was a little, but I learned from the best. Our Rhonda.
That's right.
You know,
And
I was going to say about the prompts also is that, if you do have our most complex kids where they probably need you to start with the most intrusive prompts and then work from the most to the least. Remember too that it is your responsibility as the teacher to recognize when they are starting to do the skill without that most intrusive amount of prompt, and you're starting to fade back then too, because that is really a big problem for our kids, is that we as a teacher don't fade our prompts, and so they are constantly relying on them, right? And so remember that it's up to us as the teacher to fade our prompts. So if you need to use a physical prompt, only use it to the point for which they begin doing that step by themselves, and then you fade back. So that again is going to decrease your amount of time providing the physical prompt. But remember too that when you're using prompts, you're also reinforcing skills as they acquire them, or reinforcing the step as they acquire it. So don't forget your reinforcement piece, which is probably coming up too, right, Alicia?
well, we're getting to behavior.
Hey.
Let me just kind of mention something that we have to keep in mind. They're coming from home, a lot of them.
Yep.
If you're about to do that transition, some people already have. So they got a lot of attention at home because they had adults who are their family members, with their siblings, mom, dad, grandma. So, you're going to really have to break that dependency that they have right now, because they were used to guiding them all the way.
Right.
Using that computer, doing everything, getting the pencils for them, getting the paper for them, where normally in schools or in classrooms, we tend to try to push them a little bit more. So you might have children who have regressed in independency, and you need to, keep going at it again.
And so too, then I think that going back to that physical setup, if we are having bins with everything all inside one is not going to help for that independence, because some of our kids can't discriminate in a whole bin of a ton of stuff. So maybe you have a bin of just school supplies, or maybe you have, you have it broken down for them, so that the organization of it needs to really support them to become more independent.
And if we're trying to do less physical prompts, then that definitely means that number one on your list has to be even doubly used. So more visual prompts. So like Natalia was saying about the task analysis, well, you know what, then that means that we need to really be thinking about each step of the process and having the visual to help them learn it, so that they don't need as much of the physical.
So let's think of some of those task analysis that could be there. So of course, arrival and dismissal is the obvious.
So arrival, dismissal, like if you have a routine where the students come in and they take off their backpack and they open their backpack and they take out their folder, and maybe before you had the folder being placed in a bin, a common bin, well, now it's just going to be taken out and put on their desk perhaps.
Yep.
You could have a photograph of each of those steps.
Yep.
Unzipping the backpack, pulling out the folder, putting it on the desk. So those visuals are now taking the place, or are the augmentation of you walking them through the steps, and now you're not being as physical, you're not helping them hand over hand as much, but you're cueing them to look at the photograph and follow that piece of the direction.
And even if you're using, I'm thinking of how to, increase that independence. If you're going to be doing different assignments, like whether it's math, then I would have a bin that says math, and they have to match that, visual to that basket. If you're going to be doing, like I used to do when I did independent work, I had, depending on what group I had, some kids had words, others had numbers, others had letters, others had shapes. So let's say we're using shapes, then one basket is the, only that task will be the triangle basket. The circle basket will be the next task, and the next task is going to be the square. So just like, Alicia said, and Rhonda, you really have to break it like apart, because otherwise these kids, you know, when you're telling them, okay, grab this basket, and if you're going to be making a general statement for all of them, then you're going to have to make it the same for all of them too. Grab your star basket, grab your circle basket. So then you're kind of guiding them. But again, you have to really think of all these tiny steps, because this is the only way we're going to make them more independent. And we can start basically keeping our distance too, because we're teaching them to get to these skills on their own. And I just, you know, I always used to tell everybody I would spend my first 9 weeks doing classroom management.
Absolutely.
You have to train routines, schedules, to teach this particular thing. And to me, this is important because this makes or breaks my whole school year. If I can get them to check their schedule, to follow those routines on very simple things. That was the other thing I tell people. Do not put complicated concepts right now when you're transitioning back. Keep these things simple, things that you know they're going to be good at. And you may have to assess, like if a student finishes things quickly, then that's the kid you're going to start upping up a little bit so they can slow it down. But you got to focus right now on teaching these routines and expectations for a good amount of weeks. So then you start really getting into the hard things, because I feel like if you're starting at this level right now with all the things they have been dependent on and all the changes we're having, you're just going into chaos, which will probably lead you to the next topics, I'm sure, Alicia.
Yep, that one's next.
Hey,
And
Alicia,
then,
can you just add to the increased visual and gestural prompts, the routine of how to navigate the computer? You know, that it would be wonderful if you haven't already done this to task analyze, like Natalia said, task analyze, turning on the computer, you know, showing what key to hit to get to where, showing the picture of Teams or Canvas or Zoom or whatever your location is using, and how to navigate from one place in the computer to the next, using photographs of each step of the task analysis that they're going to have to do. And even I was on the teacher's Canvas, and she had week September 29th through the October 2nd or whatever last week was. And then she had every day underneath that. And I said, you know, you might have to do a separate module. She's using Canvas, so a separate module for each day of the week, so that on Friday the student doesn't get to Canvas and see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday also. They only see Friday, because if they're seeing all of them, it might be overload for them.
Yep, it could be a trigger for behavior too.
Yes.
So she could also do it, the module by student, and you don't have to then publish the other day's activities. Or even she could just unpublish and publish, okay, it's math time now, that's published, you know?
Right, that's what I was telling her. Unpublish everything that's visible right now and only publish Friday. So
Because it can be,
and they only see Friday.
it's the same concept as, you know, I remember going in kindergarten classes and they have the whole math packet for the whole chapter stapled together, and you put it in front of my student and forget it. Meltdown City, because he's not going to do that whole packet. He doesn't understand that it's just the one page. So when we think about e-learning, it's the same. It's the same concept there. So yeah.
So an idea, I don't know if this will work, but we have, we decided to make the days of the week connected to an action verb. So we had Marching Monday. So we were able to find a little emoji person who looked like they were marching for the Monday. So that if a student can't read the word Monday, they can connect Marching Monday, the marching visual, so that they know this is the right one to get into. I'm at the right place because look at, it's Marching Monday today. And then that could be a cue for the teacher. So again, that idea of now I'm giving these visual and verbal cues so that I don't have to then go over and specifically show them where they need to be.
Okay, let me put that in here too. Use icons in Canvas that children or students are familiar with to identify.
And do me a favor, right by Canvas, you could also put like weekly checklist or newsletter, depending on how different people are using it. Because it's the same concept. If you just send a Word document, they can still do that too.
Right,
Where do
right.
you want me to put that?
Right after
Here?
icons in Canvas,
So next to Canvas,
like
just,
flash, weekly checklist or, weekly newsletter. So that way they understand that it's the same concept. It doesn't matter if you're not using them on your Canvas as well.
I'm gonna put daily. Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, so moving on to behavior, my favorite.
yay.
And this has definitely come up quite a bit when I've been talking to teachers, because they're very nervous about children that had behaviors, even prior to COVID. So the kids that bite when they get aggressive, the kids that run out the room when they're upset, kids that might need crisis management. And so how are they coping with that? So one teacher specifically, I said, have all staff wear jean jackets because they can't break the skin if they're wearing a jean jacket. I mean, of course, it is a case-by-case situation. And I think we definitely need to be thinking of the transition from home into school, where they may not have had a lot of directives placed on them. And it may have been a lot of time that they just did whatever they wanted. So now, as that transition now to school, if we start on day one saying, okay, take out your math book, they're going to throw the math book at our head instead of, be able to transition slowly. So I definitely, recommend obviously lessening the demands and initially really creating rapport, creating relationships, finding kids' interests and what they like. So really just like having things in their area, not in the classroom, but in their area of different items that they might enjoy. So you can start to see what could be a reinforcer, what could be a preferred activity and things like that, so that you slowly incorporate some non-preferred activities and some demands, but not day one, probably not even week one. So
Back to the classroom management.
right.
I think that I also, want to emphasize that some of these kids who already had these behaviors, most likely they had a behavior plan. More than ever, people really need to read those behavior plans and truly implement them with fidelity. Get to know the kids. You really need to be calling these parents that you already know these students have certain behaviors and find out what is the kid like, what is they like. That reinforcer checklist needs to be sent already if you know that child is coming back, because you already know about that child if you're making those statements. So I would have been proactive in contacting the family and telling me what are the kids likes right now to make sure you have it when they come in. And I also have to emphasize, I know there's a lot of anxiety and stress and all, and I get it. There is a lot on the line, but I feel like we also can't come in with such a negative mindset with our kids. We need to start, I always used to get kids that I heard nightmares about, but I always used to also say, I am a new teacher. It's a new classroom. And every day, even when a kid had a bad day, I always used to tell my students, tomorrow's a brand new day. We will start fresh again. So instead of bringing that baggage with me every single day and like keep putting things in that backpack until it's like overflowing, I would literally empty it out every day. And I think we need to start thinking of that. Like, I know these things can happen, but let's start with being super reinforcer. Like, let's start with simple things. Let's play, Simon says, touch your head, touch your nose, touch your ears, and reinforce and make the biggest deal about something so simple that they could do. And then in between, I used to tell my kids, okay, now pick up your pencil. Oh my God, you picked up your pencil. And you're doing it like, you're teaching them to follow. Again, let's go back to doing many skills at once. You're teaching them to follow directions, to have better listening skills, and all of that is going to come handy. Every kid that I've had behaviors on, that's how I always did it. I always used to start with immediate reinforcers. Okay, touch your head, and they got reinforced.
Yes.
Yep. And then some success. Yep.
And then, touch your ears, and then they got reinforced. Now they did 2 commands. And I build them up until then I started doing that academic component. But I agree with you, Alicia. If you start with chapter 5, you're going to lose it from the beginning.
You're going to get books thrown.
Relationships. You have to, again, classroom manage, get to know the kids, do tasks that are easier so they can feel success. That's another thing. Some kids have these behaviors because I've actually had kids tell me they feel stupid.
Yep.
they don't know these things, you know, for whatever X reason, because it takes some
Right.
time to learn and whatnot. So you have to teach them success first. And I feel like if we start doing that, then maybe our kids are gonna, you know, likely to start changing all these behaviors too. We can't always just think of these behaviors and come in like ready, like to go to war.
Right, Amy? Sorry, we just had Amy
I know.
join us.
I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Try and come back, Amy. Yeah, you know, Natalia, I was thinking the same thing. I keep like shaking my head, like, yeah. Like, you know, kids have been at home for months now. So you got to make this coming back to school fun.
Yes.
So and don't forget to have some fun, by the way, because this is really having fun and helping kids learn and grow. That's why most of us got into this profession. But somehow we've forgotten that, or we're so stressed about everything else now that we don't let that shine through. But so you've got to have some fun with the kids, and then like Natalia's saying, you know, throw in a little bit harder demand. So it's easy, hard, easy, hard, easy, you know, so that you're building their, again, endurance. We're building endurance and shaping behaviors in every move that we make, right? So you're building toward the looking for the student to learn a little bit more or a little bit harder task, or perform something they didn't want to have to do, or do that non-preferred activity. But even in your structured tasks and your non-preferred activity, you can embed preferred things.
Yep.
You know, embed, you know, if writing is hard and you have to do a writing activity, whether it's just printing somebody's name or printing words or whatever the task is, you know, then maybe having them print it with, you know, with a Donald Duck magic marker, or eraser that has, you know, I don't know any of those
Different animals.
that the kids like now, but yeah, so maybe
Like this.
about that. Yeah, there you go.
This
Yeah,
or a pen. If you know, writing is difficult, or give them choices.
Yes, choices.
Beautiful. Yes, exactly. So the hard thing doesn't
Make it
seem as hard.
fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Go to Alicia's house.
I speak
Go to
your
Alicia's
language,
office.
Rhonda.
I was just gonna say, give them choices, but you know, there's actually a comment in there, and I need to emphasize, when you're managing behaviors all across, you're not the only adult in the classroom. The adults have got to communicate and get on the same page when it comes to managing behaviors. I remember, it's kind of like the mommy and daddy game. Kids know how to play. I swear, they do. And I used to have at one point even 4 paras in my classroom, because we have different situations going on. And it's hard. The more adults there are in there, the more difficult it becomes. And also remember that your assistants or ESPs, or whatever title you want to give them, I used to call them my co-teachers, because I feel like they teach right along with me. They don't know what they don't know. So you can't expect them to have your knowledge, and you can't expect them to know those behavior plans unless you either sit down or somehow communicate it with them. You guys really need to have that, because that is, to me, that's what I found made or break my behaviors in my class. The reason why I felt my classroom was so successful is because I had such a tight network with my 2 paras in my classroom. And I literally told my administration all the time, give me whoever you want, but you cannot take away my people. Like, that is why my class is so successful, because we work really well together, and it was just a phenomenal team. Like, they were my right and left hand side to everything I did. So I really feel like people need to have that in the mind. You're not the only adult in the class, and it takes 2 to tango.
Yep, for sure.
You guys,
And you know what, along with that, Natalia, is the idea of, especially if you're familiar with your students, and, you know, so if they're new to you this year and you've only been in the COVID e-learning situation, you may not really know what to expect, but this would be a good time to chat with parents and make sure that you have a clear idea. But that whole idea of anticipating the needs of what might occur,
Yep.
and having a plan for it. So like Alicia has under biters, elopers, and crisis, you know, anticipate the needs and have a plan. So that goes back to Natalia's, you know, communicating with the other staff members in your class and you know, any other support people who might become involved as well, is know what the plan is before the problem occurs. So that means a discussion, and you know, in the next few days or weeks, whenever your students are entering for the first time back into your classroom, before they enter, have a plan. Have a plan.
And I think too, like, people are so consumed by the fear that they
Right.
sometimes can't think clearly. And so, yes, if you have a student that was an eloper before, well, you need to have that plan ready. So who is going, where are they going, and what's the team going to do? You know, what was it before?
Mm-hmm.
That really hasn't changed, you know. And then for the biters too, if you know it's a student that's very sensory and, you know, he just likes to let that input, so what are you going to use instead of your arm? You know, and if you do get the arm, that's when the jean jacket is needed, you know. So always being like one step ahead of them.
Right.
If it's a student that unfortunately has crisis management on his IEP, then how is that going to occur if needed? You know, so is there a room clear plan? Where will those students go if a room clear is warranted? Having another room available, that might be the challenge right now. But if we're not thinking about this beforehand, that's when it's going to become a problem, you know?
And I like
So-
that about having a plan, Alicia. I remember I would find out about my students before they came in, and if I had an eloper, where are you going to place them? Especially now that they have their own centers, that kid should be the furthest away from the door.
Yes.
Great idea. Yep.
If you have, like you said, you know, that eloper, make sure that they have to pass through a couple adults prior to them walking out. I remember when I got a kid who, and this is a true story, they actually eloped quite far from the school, and I got them the following year. I was so traumatized with that story. My anxiety level was super high. I completely changed my classroom setup because I was preventing. I said, I will make sure that every time, and I made sure that in my zoning schedule, very important, it helped me manage. I knew that kid could never be left alone. He needed an adult nearby in case he decided to bolt.
Yep.
And be the road runner, which he was really good at. And he knew how to escape every single corner of the entire school. So, but when he got into my classroom, it diminished because he knew that before he even got to the door, he had to go through so many steps. So again, trying to have that ahead in your mind. Same thing for the biters. I always talk to my OT for those three, making sure that if it's a kid that has those sensory needs, especially right here in this area, because that's why, you know, their body's asking them to have that sensory too, or is it a behavior? Finding out the why of that behavior is really going to benefit us to be proactive again. Plan. Always have a plan and be proactive. Don't wait until things happen to try to figure it out. And if it does happen afterwards and you couldn't plan it before, then analyze what happened and how we can prevent it from happening again.
So,
so-
Natalia, are you saying prior planning prevents poor performance?
The 5
5
Ps.
Ps, that's right.
Let's
Prior
play.
planning prevents poor performance. One more time.
Prior planning prevents poor performance. Woohoo!
Absolutely.
So let's move on to the last slide, which is all about teaching these de-escalation strategies that we as the staff also need to be utilizing during this time, because these strategies are good for all of us when we're stressed. So these are not solely just for our students, but also for us to use in times when we have a lot of anxiety. So this is the perfect time to be using these, modeling the use of them, and then using them with our students. So, you know, sensory is definitely a big one. And so I already know that I've heard from some schools, you know, the items that they've used before, because they're cloth material or something like that, or maybe they only had one item of that, that doesn't mean sensory goes out the window. It means, what are we using instead? So I think it's very important for the team, which includes that OT, that's a big part. And even if, you know, not every student, maybe the OT only has one student, but she could still collaborate with the teacher to come up with ideas, because oftentimes the occupational therapist is the one that might be, you know, really the most knowledgeable person when it comes to that sensory integration stuff. So the identifying things and then purchasing items if you don't have them, you know. So, and identify too, not every student needs specific sensory items. We have our kids that are more sensory seekers than others, so those would be the priority. And then, you know, finding other items for the other kiddos. But also remembering go noodle flow and incorporating, maybe schedule those times into the kids' day as well, or some other where they can be on their computer or you're doing it as a whole group activity. But they have some awesome videos that our kids are very responsive to, even yoga activities and things that are on there that I've seen our students and classes do awesome with. And then of course our zones of regulation, which has a lot of great visual supports, a lot of great tools there to help our kids with de-escalation. And so that goes hand in hand. If we're teaching these skills when their students are calm, then we're not going to see the behaviors anymore because there won't be a need. And so again, a big thing about teaching these activities is to do it when they're calm. So for example, that glitter bottle, you know, there's a great video that goes along with that glitter bottle that helps kids to associate this bottle with our brain. That if we have all these thoughts and craziness going on in our head, we can't function the way we need to. We cannot be calm, we cannot be productive in what we do as adults as well. And then two, when you're looking at the pretty glitter going down and the kids can make these and pick their own color and whatnot, you also want to have, you know, them be their brain associating good thoughts with these bottles. So maybe you're having them think of their happy place, or maybe for kids that are nonverbal that can't communicate what their happy place is, maybe you communicate with the parent and they bring in some photographs of what their happy place is. Maybe it's Disney World, maybe it's the beach or their pool. And so maybe you have a little photo album there with the kids' pictures so that when they're starting to de-escalate, go to your happy place and they take out their happy place book and they can look at happy images. And so then too, they're playing with their bottle. So they're associating happy thoughts, good things with this thing. So too, later you can fade that to just take your glitter bottle and they're calm with their glitter bottle.
And I think this is going to be great during again, that classroom management. Start it from the beginning, and just like you said, do it for now so when they need it, they can use it.
Well, and right too, because if not, if you just are like, oh, arts and crafts, we're making this glitter bottle, but you don't do that other piece of the mindfulness part about it, then when you give them their glitter bottle, when they're escalated, they're just going to chuck it at your head because they haven't associated that positivity with that glitter bottle. And two, every student is supposed to be getting, I think it's what, 30 minutes of SEL every day. So for some of our teachers, you know, they might be like, ooh, what do I teach with my complex learners? There's lots to teach with our complex learners in this area. And you know, really, this is what's going to take them far in life. You know, if they don't know how to de-escalate, they're never going to hold a job.
Right.
You know, so this is actually the most critical component as far as I'm concerned.
And, you know, I was going to say that, you know, this doesn't mean do sensory from 12:30 to 1.
Right.
Better to do 2 or 3 minutes of SEL every hour, or sensory activities every hour, 2 or 3 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes every hour, so that they always can remain or have the a greater probability of remaining in the calm space for longer amounts of time, because you're keeping them calm and you're nurturing them from every single hour, instead of just, oh, well, sensories from 1 to 2. I mean, so you have to wait until 1 to 2 to get your nervous system relaxed again. So a few minutes every hour is better.
And I also want to
with sensory, with a sensory room. No need for sensory rooms, guys. Sensory in every room, practice throughout the day is really when you're actually feeding their nervous system and developing their skill to manage themselves.
And I just wanted to remind everybody, one shoe does not fit all. So keep in mind that you have to get to know your students. It is very important to know some students you need to calm them down, others you need to hype them up. I actually had sensory in all my centers. So in this time, because we're switching our mindset, then that means every so often a student will have sensory. Some of my kids needed the yoga ball, another one needed the rocking chair, another one needed that glitter bottle. So you have to find their particular things that benefit that child. Because just like, you know, right now, Alicia, Rhonda, and I, if you put music in front of us, maybe we don't like the same style of music. It's the same concept. We all have our own unique styles and our own needs. I may want very fast music because that's how I'm feeling right now, while Rhonda may just need a calming, you know, and that will be Alicia, a calming, you know, soothing video. So again, you have to just get to know their little knacks. Yes, you can teach like a general one, like Alicia said, and play like these in-betweens, but also figure out their own individual little needs and how you're gonna meet them. Because we have to differentiate. Just like we differentiate for academics, we also differentiate for behavior strategies and their SEL needs. So again, just trying to make sure we have all of that in when we're applying all these things.
Great
and
idea.
too, like when you're talking about the 2 to 3 minutes of SEL, for some teachers, if that is too much, 2 to 3 minutes every hour, then at least identify the times of day that it's critical. So maybe that arrival from home, that transition from home, you're going to want to do something to calm their system. Maybe preparing to go to lunch or coming back from lunch. Or same thing with specials and coming back from specials, or coming back from recess, or even just transitioning from a preferred activity to a non-preferred. They might need some strategies at that point. So, you know, if it's challenging for you to think, how am I going to do this every hour, even though 2 to 3 minutes is not a lot, and that would total your 30 minutes, at least think of scheduling it during times that make sense.
Good thought.
Any other last minute thoughts? We're a little bit over our hour anyways, but I think we came up with some good recommendations and suggestions. Rhonda, we're so happy you joined us today. This was fun.
I really like this Thursday Thoughts. I think we need to just, you know, kind of put our brains together and just think outside that box. I feel like a lot of minds, you know, everyone's mind is like that glitter bottle right now. Like it's just scattered and there's everywhere. So sometimes I think just sitting down and collaborating and picking on each other's minds really help us problem solve some of these things that are going to be happening or that we haven't thought about. And some of them are very simple, but we just seem to forget them in the midst of that, you know, cloudy bottle that we're going through. So I look forward to doing it again. I think it's a wrap.
All right, guys.
Thanks,
Well,
guys.
thank you.
Yes,
Till next time.
absolutely. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.